Chris just pointed at us.
That means that we're live. It's time to go. Go time, right? Producer Chris did that. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Try to wear a black shirt, but I don't have any clever sayings on my black shirt. It's just starter, you know.
I'm sorry.
I can't beat yours.
Reform Sage.
I know. Reform Sage. By what standard? Kind of give us a little thought behind that. Okay.
Everybody lives their life according to something.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what do you live your life by?
What is your standard?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's the standard?
Yeah. Anybody ever asked you about that?
No, not this one.
Not that one?
No. Christ or chaos? I get some.
You get some on that one?
Some comments on that one.
You should get some on that one.
Yeah.
That's pretty intriguing.
Yeah, but I think it's maybe a little bit deep.
Yeah, it is kind of deep.
So.
You think it'd be better if it had a question mark at the end of standard, or does that matter, you don't think?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
I don't make the T-shirt.
Well, nobody's asked you yet, so we don't know, right?
Yeah,
I love it. I love it, though.
Yeah.
I think that's really one of the core questions of life, right?
Yeah.
When you get into it.
Heard somebody very interested. Well, Doug Wilson. He was in an interview, and somebody asked him, "Well, are you wanting a theocratic government?" Because he's a Christian national, or he pushes Christian national views. Mm-hmm. And his response was, "We all live under a theocracy. It just matters who the theo is."
Well, yeah, there's a good point. Yeah,
if it's us, or if it's God, we all live under one.
Yeah,
and that's kind of like what this is saying. By what standard? You know, we all have a standard that we live by. Yeah, and so what is that standard? So
that's a great point.
Yeah, which kind of goes into what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? And,
and
man, you've done some really good research on this dude in Charlotte, huh?
Yeah, August 22nd, a young lady from Ukraine. Her name was Iryna, and I'm not even going to attempt the last name.
Right.
But she got done with work. She had fled Ukraine and came to Charlotte, North Carolina, to escape the war. She gets on the mass transit there in Charlotte, sits down, and a guy by the name of DeCarlos Brown Jr., 34 years old. She was 23, I think.
Man.
34 years old. You can watch on the video. They just released the video a couple of days ago. He takes out a pocket knife, opens it up, stands up, stabs her 3 times, and walks down the... This has got people in it. I mean, this isn't like she was the only one on the train. There are other people sitting around. He stabs her 3 times in the neck, walks off, and gets off the train at the next stop. Takes 90 seconds for anyone to notice that she's been stabbed. And the only reason why it was noticed is somebody noticed the blood on the floor.
Oh, my gosh.
And she shortly died after that.
Oh, my word.
But, he was what they said was a homeless gentleman who had been arrested 34 times.
34 times?
No, excuse me. I'm sorry. He was 34 years old. He was arrested 14 times prior to...
14 times still.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about he was arrested for like jaywalking and stuff like that. He had been arrested for breaking and entering, aggravated assault against a female, felony larceny. I mean, serious crimes. And in fact, the last time he was before a judge was this past summer, and the judge said, yeah, you've done some bad things, but I think you need a mental health evaluation, and he let him go to walk the streets again, and they never followed up or did the mental health evaluation or anything, and now, of course, he's in jail for murder. And what was very interesting was the mayor of Charlotte, and I'll give you her name. The mayor of Charlotte is Lyles. Is her last name. I think it's V. Lyles. And she stated that the stabbing was a, quote, tragic situation, and she focused on Brown's mental health crisis and homelessness, urging compassion for mental health issues, and she never once mentioned the victim's name or the fact that somebody had been killed. It reminds me of a quote. Adam Smith, who was, Wealth of Nations, that guy said, "Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent."
Yeah.
And we've seen this for the past, I don't know, a couple of administrations, at least I know in the last since the BLM riots and
Sure.
George Floyd, this idea that we need to excuse those who do wrong and violate civility.
Yeah.
We need to somehow excuse them. And all that does is just punishes those who are law-abiding citizens who are just trying to live their life.
And it's kind of similar. We make that argument fairly regularly, I think, when we look at illegal immigration and we think about those who are allowed to cross in illegally as an affront to those who have done it legally, the right way, and those who are in the process of doing that. So really what you're kind of bringing to us today is maybe even a broader understanding of the fact this goes way beyond. While we hear that a lot in the immigration argument, we don't necessarily hear that as much with this particular argument.
Correct.
But like you said earlier before we came on air, doesn't that sound kind of whatever it was we're doing, right? On stream or whatever.
On stream,
that the news media, mainstream news media is not going to cover all this. WPT, I don't know. They probably did because they're kind of a talk show, conservative talk show. But this thing in Charlotte's not covered.
No, what has been interesting, there have been zero stories by the mainstream media. And in fact, the only reason why it's gained any traction whatsoever has been, of course, through social media, and was the fact that the Charlotte Transit Authority released the video. And that's the only reason why it's gotten any traction whatsoever. In fact, the mayor of Charlotte said that she appreciated people who on social media who refused to share this. And she appreciated news outlets not doing stories on it. She appreciated those. So she's encouraging the hiding of this. Just think about another example of what happened on mass transit. What was it, last year or the year before? Penny. What was it, Daryl Penny?
Yeah.
There was a crazed man on the subway threatening to kill people. And this young man took it on himself to basically
defend everybody
else and kind of like calm him down. I mean, put him in a chokehold basically, and the guy ends up passing away. And how quickly that was
sensationalized. Totally.
It was on every news channel about how horrible this guy was for killing a black man, and no mention of the fact that the guy was threatening to kill other people.
Right.
And so it's a complete opposite. This is a man who aggressively killed a young woman, and there's just been silence.
Yeah. Which and see, Kevin, I don't want to be overly simplistic, but when I hear stuff like this, I said this to a couple of my family members a couple of days ago when they were talking about not this particular situation, but just some off the wall crazy stuff that just totally antithetical to everything that we live our lives by morally and ethically. And I said, you're listening to demons talk.
Exactly.
You're listening to demons. You've got to recognize that when you hear some of this hateful speech around things that are totally against God's principles and precepts, you have to recognize that you're hearing demons talk. And I literally believe that in a lot of cases. And we go like...
I would wholeheartedly agree, because let's look at how God established government.
Yeah.
Where does God establish government in the Bible? We all come to agreement that it's kind of around the Noahic covenant.
Genesis 9.
Yeah, where he says that, hey, once Noah gets off the ark and he says, hey, from this point on, if you shed innocent blood, the cost of that is your blood being shed.
Absolutely.
And so therefore he establishes the fact that humanity is supposed to basically protect the innocent, punish evil.
Yes.
And then as you go throughout Scripture and you see the Mosaic covenant and you see God establishing Israel and giving them basically you look at Leviticus, or Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, he's establishing, hey, this is how you can flourish as human beings in a culture. We see that also, then we see that the purpose of government is also to promote order.
Right.
And basically common good, or what I would say is cohesion.
Right.
Because just think about this, we go to, and some people would say, well, and I would even throw out that one of the purposes of government is to promote nationalism.
Agree. Agree.
You know, that because in order to make a people, there has to be a common bond.
Right.
And just think about with Israel, when they were in Egypt and they're getting ready to leave, what happens? It's the Passover, right? And what does God tell them to do with the Passover?
Yeah.
Every year you celebrate Passover, and just think about that. You know, 4 generations later, they're celebrating Passover, and it brings them all together as a nation, and it reminds them of what God has done for them.
Right.
And they have this same identity. And you just think about that. Those are the 3 purposes of government there: to protect the innocent, to punish evil, and to promote order and the common good and cohesion of the culture.
Yeah.
And we can see that Satan, this is satanic. The destruction of those purposes of government is satanic in origin, because who does it hurt? It hurts human beings.
Yeah, you're so right. And you know, it's funny because all of this is central to God equipping us to take His principles, His precepts, and for us to make assessments, okay? We have to look at something and say, okay, according to God's word, this is right or this is wrong, right?
Right.
You were going back to the origin of government in Genesis 9, et cetera. Somebody had to make the assessment. This person has illegally or in an immoral way taken the blood of someone else. They need to repay with their own blood. And yet we've seen our world today flip that assessment to say, well, what right do you have, or who are you to judge? See, we've taken that assess word and we've used this more harsh sounding word called judge, right, to assign a negative connotation to that which God has already advised us and commanded us to do. Right?
Correct.
So we have to assess using His principles, because that's what they're there for. That's what the law was there for. That's what, you know, that a lot of the principles that we see in the New Testament that are kind of, you know, complementary to the law, right? And yet our society, Satan, it's a satanic thing, has taken that and made it, if you're going to do that, then you're just saying that you're better than everybody else, or, you know, and it's this assigning this superiority complex, and you get to things like white privilege, and you get to the things like why Christopher Columbus was a terrorist or whatever they want to call him, right? And all because being able to successfully, in the perception of people, to flip that thought, that mindset, over from assessment to a cruel, in their term, judgment.
Right. It's just interesting. You know, we can all admit there's been times where government oversteps.
Yeah, sure.
Police powers overstep. We know instances of that. But that, you don't take the exception and then throw out the rule.
Right, exactly. That's a great point.
And that's a problem. But you know, you see these, especially the blue cities. I mean, cities that are run by Democrats. And I'll just be honest, I believe the Democratic Party has been co-opted by the forces of evil.
I agree.
Because
totally agree.
you can't look at what they promote. They promote this cashless bail system so that if you do something heinous, a heinous crime, you walk in and you walk back out. And so it puts the police in a position of, we're not even going to bother arresting people. Yeah. And what I found interesting is, you know, Giuliani cleaned up New York, and how did he do it? He did it by prosecuting the small little crimes.
Right.
And he said, you know, if you start there, it takes care of the big stuff.
Right.
Because what you promote, you end up with more of. So if you go, hey, it's okay to, you know, steal a car, it's okay to assault somebody or whatever, you're going to end up with more of that. It's the role of government. It's just one of those things. You know, Paul talks about this, the law as a teacher. Yeah. The law teaches us in culture and society what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
That's right.
If it's not going to punish evildoers, then what do you get more of?
Right. You're going to get more of the evil doing. You know, it's funny, you mentioned this, and it's really so true. I'm called my attention. My mother-in-law, who's a keen observer of the culture and politics, and she's 94, and she's still, she gets it, she understands, and she'll hear things like, and you kind of go back to the blue cities and all this kind of thing, and the fact that the Democratic, I agree, the Democratic Party has been co-opted certainly by the forces of evil. Just kind of look at, I don't think we would have said that probably 12 years ago,
right, or
16 years ago. But one of the things she always says, well, this person's talking about how this under a Democratic, administration worked, and they just messed it all up. I said, you got to understand where their perspective is. I said, the idea of working on that side of the aisle for many, not all, but many, is tearing down the existing institutions of the United States in order to rebuild it from ground up into something that is more akin to Marxism, more akin to socialism, et cetera, a godless society. But they have to tear down what is there now before they can rebuild. So I think you and I had this conversation one time in the past few years. I don't know. It used to be that we could pretty much expect and have confidence that all of our politicians competing for offices would have had life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a priority.
Correct.
But we don't have that anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's very interesting is we just had a senator from Virginia, Kane,
who was a vice presidential candidate on the ticket of Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Yep.
He just stated from, I guess he was in a committee or whatever, but from his committee chair or what, his seat, that this idea that our rights come from God is wrong.
And it's alarming and destructive. He used some pretty
he did.
strong language about this.
Right. And what he's saying is it comes from government and laws, that our rights come from government and laws.
Yeah.
But if our rights come from government and laws, then if you change the government or change the laws, can not your rights then go away? You have to, within Christian thinking, within Christian governmental thinking, going back to the early church fathers, they recognized this, that there were certain rights and laws. And you saw it with Augustine of Hippo, and you saw it with Calvin and Luther, and then some of the reformers, that there were rights that we had. And of course, Thomas Jefferson so clearly states that their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you take life away, a baby that is killed in the womb never has an opportunity to have liberty or to pursue happiness.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
if you take life away, if that's not seen as something sacred or intrinsically valuable, and by intrinsic value, you mean that just by the fact that a person is a human being gives them worth.
You don't have to add anything to it.
Correct.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's just worth because we were created in the image of God. So therefore, with life, you have that. With liberty, people have the right to, and liberty is not license. Liberty is freedom with responsibility.
With responsibility, absolutely.
So, but we should have the right to, if we want to have 2 cars, we should have 2 cars. If we want to have 4 kids, we should be allowed to have 4 kids. Those are the types of things. We should be able to own a house if we want to own a house, or not own a house if we don't want to own a house, or be able to pick the color we want to paint our walls, those types of things. But also then you have the pursuit of happiness. And so many people have gotten that one confused because they think that somehow we're guaranteed happiness. What he was talking about is the pursuit to fulfill what we would say God has placed in you as your purpose for life. You should have the right to pursue that. Whether you succeed or not, it's a different thing. But human beings should have the right to proceed. But when you start taking that away, then you're making the government, people with power, the arbiter. Basically, you're making them God, because they get to determine what rights you get and what rights you don't get.
Well, because with life now, if I'm saying that someone else can decide the fate of the baby that a lady is carrying, that's taking the responsibility away, for that life, and putting it upon yourself. It's not really responsibility. It's avoidance is
Right.
what it is. You noted that liberty is freedom with responsibility. You take the responsibility away. What have you got? You've got an anarchist type of
License.
approach
Yeah.
to life. You've got licenses. Do to me whatever you want to do. Disregard what it might do to me.
Right. It basically boils things down to might makes right.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Because liberty without responsibility, if it's just, or freedom without responsibility, if I can do whatever I want, I'm allowed to do whatever I want until somebody tells me
That's right.
I can't.
That's right. That's right. And how they tell you is going to differ. And that's where a lot of crime we see, right? That's the way to tell me that.
This guy thought he had the right, the freedom to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he got it in his head, whether it was voices telling him, whether he was crazy or whatever the case was, he got it in his head that he had the right to stand up and stab her 3 times in the neck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And the only way that was going to stop is if somebody stronger had been there to stop him.
Needed a Darryl Penny on that. On that transit. The pursuit of happiness. Now let's kind of go there for a minute, right? Let's talk about what that really means, because you and I, as followers of Christ, we often make the point that happiness is situational, right? We're not going to be happy all the time,
No,
right?
we can't be.
However, with the Holy Spirit, with security of our identity in Christ, we can have a relatively consistent state of fulfillment, right?
Correct.
And contentment. We make the differentiation between contentment and happiness. And I really kind of think, in my reading and understanding of those words, that sometimes I kind of wish it had been we pursue the pursuit of fulfillment, right? Because happiness is situational.
But I think the word back then had more.
It did
more connotation of fulfillment than it did.
It was not as self-centered.
It was not an emotional necessarily response when the way he would used it and the way they would have understood it 250 years ago or 300 years ago.
And don't you think back then that the sense of responsibility that two people would have had with each other was deeper? It was more because we didn't have all the things. There had to be much more mutual dependency, interdependency on each other, just because that's the way society would work. We didn't have everything we had. There was a lot of common, not communism, but a lot of commonism, just like it was in the Acts 2. In the early church, with a lot of dependency on each other that we don't have today.
Right, exactly.
And so that probably speaks to some of the shift in the definition of the word as you bring it up.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm thinking of that, expanding that out even to the Constitution, that our forefathers, when they established our Constitution, do you know what book of the Bible they went to the most to establish this idea of government?
One of the books of the law, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy.
They referenced in their conversations with each other as they were hashing out this Constitution, they referenced the book of Deuteronomy the most. And why? Because in that book, God does establish those 3 purposes, like I said, of government. Protect the innocent, punish evil, and then promote that the order and the commonality, or basically the national identity. That is government. What I find interesting, and I used to do mission trips, medical mission trips to El Salvador, and when I went down there, El Salvador at that time was one of the murder capitals of the world. So when we showed up, we had armed guards with automatic weapons with us all the time. The churches, they would get permission from, not the government necessarily, they got permission from the government, but they would also have to go and get permission from whatever gang was controlling the village that we were going to go provide medical care for. And it was just an interesting dynamic. Most of the kids who were the interpreters for us were out of the Christian school. Most of them lived behind gated communities. When you would walk down the street and go into stores, most stores had an armed guards with a shotgun outside the store, guarding the store. Wow. And there was just utter chaos within that country. Yeah. And because of that, they had a hard time economically. Like, you couldn't go out and start a business. Why? Because if you started a business, whether it was MS-13 or Borrow 13, they were going to come to you and demand part of your business. I remember that there was a prior to us getting there, or one of the trips, there had been a basically the gang who was controlling the area basically said, we don't want any buses in here. We don't want buses to come because they wanted a bus strike or something to that effect. They were trying to get the government to do something for them. And they were pulling bus drivers off of buses and killing them in front of people.
Oh, my gosh.
And a gentleman comes in, gets elected a few years ago. I think it was about 6 years ago now, Bukele. And what does he do? He comes in and he basically says, if you're a gang member or breaking the law, I'm putting you in prison. Today, El Salvador is the safest country in Central America. Because why? Because he was willing to protect the innocent, the average El Salvadorian who just wanted to live his life, and he was willing to punish evil.
Yeah.
And we haven't learned our lesson, or we're completely doing the opposite right now. It just seems like there is a certain element of our culture that's saying, no, we need to protect the guilty, we need to protect the evil, and we need to punish the innocent.
And I've always looked at that as at a deeper level. Kind of goes back to what we said earlier. We're hearing a demon talk, right?
Yeah.
It's an example of the success of the strategy of Satan. Right, to flip the script and to tear down the standards and the idea that there is a set, moral absolutism, which has been obviously giving way to a lot of relativism over the past decades, century, couple of centuries, or whatever. And I sometimes I wonder, is it really that simple? And I think that at the core, I think it is.
Yeah.
But the way that it plays out and how you and I, and plenty of other of our listeners, I'm sure, are thinking, how could any individual think that way? How could someone who probably holds a good job, who is smart enough to do this or do that, would think that this, as you said, the protection of the criminal would be paramount to justice for the victim? And yet we see it every day.
Every day.
We watch the screens on TV. We see protests all around.
It's amazing because, you look at Chicago now and, I think 5 people this past weekend were murdered. Over Labor Day, there was like 80-some people shot or something to that effect.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you look at the people in power in Illinois and Chicago, and they're going, we don't want anything to change.
Right.
There's no problem here.
Yeah.
Everything's okay.
Right.
Yeah, you have a whole segment of the population living in terror every single day because there are people in power who are saying, nope, we don't want to punish evil.
And I wonder sometimes, and again, even though in my mind I think I understand this is a manifestation of evil in itself.
Unhuman.
Unhuman. Is some of it because these leaders, and they're not leaders, that's totally a generic term.
Right.
Because they're not leaders. They're not even managers or even administrators, to be honest with you, that their goal is not to be criticized themselves. And so they downplay, they say, no, it's not really that bad, and in order to protect themselves. Is it a blatant disregard for others, or is it such a self-absorption with themselves and their own reputation that they want to do everything they can to fend off criticism?
I don't think it's that. I think it goes much deeper than that. I think that they have sold out to Satan's lie.
So it is the blatant disregard
I think that's
of
the blatant
humanity
disregard of
and
humanity.
individuals.
They hate humanity.
What do you think? And this will be kind of where we
have to end.
But we're going to pick up on the next one, right?
Okay.
On this subject, because I think this is fascinating. If you're okay with this, right?
Okay.
What do you think they feel they stand to gain? Just kind of give us your thoughts on that. Kind of segue us into the next podcast, the next episode that we're going to do. Okay.
I honestly think that they have. I don't know what they technically have to gain. I think they just hate whether they would verbalize this or even understand it. I think they hate God so much that this is just they are basically marching to the orders of his enemy.
Yeah, as Satan goes after you and I because he
Correct.
can't get to God.
No,
Satan cannot get to God, so he goes after us.
He goes after, God's creation.
This is Satan on earth.
Right.
This is
This
literally
is
hell on earth.
This is the natural outworking of the worship of Satan.
Can we continue this
Sure.
next one? This is
Okay.
good. All right.
Okay.
So we got to go. We got to go.
Thanks.
It's time. Thanks for listening. We will be back on this subject real soon.
Okay.
Thanks. God bless.